So let me ask you a question. Where does that feeling of you actually come from? Is it some kind of ghost in the machine, totally separate from your body? Or is it something much, much deeper, something biological? Well, today, we're going to dive into how your brain quite literally builds you. And to get started, let's just jump right in with this pretty bold statement from neuroscientist Dr. Antonio Damasio. His whole idea turns centuries of thinking on its head. He argues that consciousness isn't floating around somewhere separate from our bodies. No way. It is our bodies, or at least how our brain represents our bodies. The self is a biological process, plain and simple. Okay, so if it's not some mystical spirit, then what's it for? Damosio's take is that consciousness evolved for a really practical reason, to help us manage life. It's a super sophisticated tool for survival, for making sure we're doing okay. So in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly how your brain builds this incredible thing from the ground up. To really get a handle on consciousness, we first have to break it down into its essential parts. And according to Damasio, there are three key ingredients that all come together to create the experience that you're having right this very second. First up is wakefulness. Pretty simple, right? Think of it as the on-off switch. Are you awake or are you asleep? But that's the easy part. The real magic, the real meat of the story happens with the other two ingredients, the mind and the self. So let's unpack what those really mean. So what exactly is the mind in this model? Well, think of it like a movie that's constantly playing inside your head. Damasio calls this movie a flow of images. But, and this is important, don't just think of pictures. We're talking about neural maps, patterns of activity in your brain that represent everything, what you see, what you hear, and even the state of your own body. It's just this constant stream. All right, so the self is built in layers, and it all starts at the very bottom with the foundation, what's called the proto-self. This is the most basic, most ancient layer of who you are, and it's one we probably share with tons of other creatures. It's that constant background feeling of just being a living thing. And here's the kicker. The origin of our self isn't in the big, wrinkly, highly evolved part of the brain we always talk about. Nope. It all starts way down in the brainstem, an evolutionarily ancient structure that's actually a lot like what you'd find in a reptile. Our sense of self has some seriously deep roots. So the proto-self has one absolutely critical job, to constantly monitor and map what's going on inside your body, chemically and physically. It works 24/7, totally below your awareness, and it generates what Damasio calls primordial feelings, that super basic sense of existence, of pleasure or pain. It's literally the feeling of life itself. You know, the best way to picture the proto-self is to think of it like your body's internal status light. It's just always on, quietly humming in the background, signaling that, yep, the system is online and everything is running. Okay, so we've got the foundation. Now let's build on that with the next layer up, the core self. And this is totally different. This isn't some constant background hum. It's dynamic, it's focused, and it's generated fresh, moment by moment, living completely in the here and now. So how does this core self get made? Well, it happens in a super fast three-step sequence. It all starts when your organism, that's you, runs into something, an object or an event. Could be seeing a face, hearing a sudden noise, or even just having a thought pop into your head. Then, step two. Instantly, in a flash, that interaction causes a change in your internal state. That constant map that your proto-self was making, it gets updated. Every single thing you perceive, big or small, tweaks your body's internal chemistry. And then, bam, in that moment, a pulse of core self is created. What is that pulse? It's the feeling of you experiencing that thing. It's not just the object, and it's not just your body's reaction, it's the brain mapping the relationship between the two. So if the proto-self was that quiet little status light in the background, the core self is the big, bright spotlight of your awareness. It just flashes on, moment by moment, lighting up your interaction with whatever's happening right now. And that brings us to the top layer, the final piece of the puzzle, the one that really makes us us. This is the autobiographical self. This is the director of your own personal movie, the narrator of your life story. The autobiographical self is basically a mental time traveler. It takes all those fleeting pulses of the core self, all those now moments, and weaves them into a bigger story, using your memories of the past and your plans and ideas for the future.
And this is a huge deal. I mean, this ability to build a narrative is the launchpad for literally everything we consider high-level human culture. Complex reasoning, language, art, science, our systems of justice, all of it springs from this amazing ability to create a story of who we are across time. So let's just put it all together real quick. At the very bottom, you've got the proto-self. It's constant. It's in the brainstem, and it's all about regulating life. Built on top of that is the core self, living in the here and now, bringing in the cortex to handle interactions with the world. And then, at the very top, the autobiographical self uses all those fancy higher brain areas to create your identity, a story that connects your past, present, and future.
Okay, so we've got this amazing biological model of the self. But so what? Why does any of this actually matter? Well, looking at consciousness this way, from the bottom up, really forces us to tackle some of the biggest questions out there. I mean, think about this for a second. Damasio's work really suggests that our feelings are deeply, deeply connected to the fact that we have vulnerable, biological bodies that can get sick and die. So could a robot, made of metal and silicon with none of that risk, ever truly feel conscious the way we do? Its whole foundation would be different. And here's another one. What about free will? If our sense of self is just a biological program running to keep us alive, are we just robots made of meat? Well, the argument is a little more nuanced. Our basic biology might be pretty determined, but that autobiographical self, our story, is what creates culture, laws, and technology, which in turn gives us a measure of freedom to actually guide our own lives. You know, when it's all said and done, the most powerful takeaway here might be this. We tend to think that consciousness is all about rational thought, but this view flips that idea completely on its head. Consciousness isn't really about thinking, it's about living. And it all starts with that most basic, fundamental, biological feeling of life itself.